When we mention the name United States of America today, what comes to mind is a superpower, a giant force that has a significant impact on the entire world. However, several centuries ago, the United States was just a vast land that was not even considered important by other major civilizations. The region we now know as the United States was once a small, marginalized colony ruled by the British. The United States did not emerge as a global power from the start. Instead, it grew and developed through a series of wars, economic expansions, social revolutions, and technological innovations that transformed the country from a small, backward colony to the most influential nation in the world. It all began with a vast, untouched continent. Before the world knew it as the United States, this land had been inhabited by various ancient civilizations for centuries. In the south, the Aztecs built massive cities with magnificent pyramids. They had accurate astronomical calendars, advanced trade systems, and complex social structures. In the north, tribes like the Apache, Cherokee, and Sioux lived with their own cultures and laws. They were not just nomads, they were nations with their own political and economic systems. However, when European colonizers arrived in the late 15th century, the world they knew would change forever. The story began in 1492 when 3 Spanish ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria, landed on an unknown continent. Christopher Columbus, a Genoese sailor sailing under the Spanish flag, thought he had arrived in India. Unbeknownst to him, he had just opened a new chapter in world history. After Columbus, other European colonizers began to arrive. Spain conquered Central and South America by defeating the Aztecs and Incas. France controlled most of Canada and started trading fur. Meanwhile, the British established colonies on the east coast of North America, which would eventually become the United States. Among all these colonial powers, the British would play the most significant role in shaping the United States. In 1607, a group of British settlers established their first settlement in North America, naming it Jamestown, Virginia. This marked the beginning of British expansion in the new continent. However, life in early America was not easy. Settlers faced hunger, disease, and conflicts with Native Americans, leading to many deaths in the early years. Despite these challenges, planting crops introduced by Native Americans became crucial. These crops, later known as corn, became the primary food source for settlers. After gaining independence, the United States stood at a crossroads. They were no longer under British rule, but they still lacked a stable government system. Initially, the country was governed by the Articles of Confederation, but this system proved too weak. There was no strong central government, and the economy was in chaos. In 1787, American leaders gathered in Philadelphia to draft a new constitution. This document would become the foundation of the United States government system, which we know today as a democracy with a division of power between the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. In 1789, George Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States. At that time, the United States still faced numerous challenges, one of which was territorial expansion. In the early 19th century, the concept of manifest destiny emerged, which held that the United States was destined to conquer the entire continent from the Atlantic to the Pacific. This idea drove the United States to rapidly expand its territory. In 1803, the United States purchased the Louisiana Territory from France, doubling the country's size overnight. In 1845, the United States seized Texas from Mexico, which led to tensions that eventually escalated into war. In 1848, the United States emerged victorious and gained control of California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico. Later, in 1867, Alaska was purchased from Russia, expanding American territory to the north. However, this expansion came with significant consequences. Native Americans were forcibly removed from their lands, leading to cultural destruction and horrific genocide. On the other hand, this rapid growth also sparked internal conflicts and a civil war that threatened the unity of the United States. As America grew, the country began to divide into two factions. The industrialized northern states opposed slavery, while the agricultural southern states relied on slavery to drive their economy. These tensions eventually culminated in 1861, when the southern states seceded and formed the Confederate States of America. The United States was now embroiled in a brutal civil war, a conflict that would determine whether the nation would remain united or perish forever. Under the leadership of Abraham Lincoln, the Union Army clashed with the Confederacy for 4 years, resulting in over 600,000 deaths, making it the deadliest war in American history. However, in the end, the North emerged victorious, the Confederacy surrendered, and slavery was abolished, reunited the United States as a single nation. The Civil War paved the way for massive industrialization in America, propelling the country toward global dominance. In 1898, the United States went to war with Spain, seizing several territories, including Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. This marked the first time the United States began to involve itself in international politics. At this point, America was no longer just a developing nation but a country that was beginning to build a new empire. In 1917, the United States entered World War I, which strengthened the American economy. However, the next war would change everything. In 1941, the United States became embroiled in World War II after suffering a devastating attack from Japan. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki demonstrated to the world that America possessed the most powerful weapons on the planet. Following this war, the world was left with only two dominant powers: the United States and the Soviet Union. The Bretton Woods system established the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, solidifying America's control over various critical sectors on the international stage.